YouTube says we're live, and
E-
you could always trust YouTube. Again,
Yeah.
I'm still watching the replay. It's just right when you yawned, so it's
Oh
perfect.
God. Did
It's
everyone
perfect
see that?
timing. I hope so. I hope
Uh,
so.
no, that's my day in a nutshell. Ooh.
Man, today's been rough. The last I don't know, the last couple of weeks have been rough. I've had very little rest, very little time to do anything. Um, so I know that that
You
we'll
have a
get
real
into.
job, though, right? A real
Well,
job.
I have a real job, and I have
Yeah.
two. This job, and I have a real job, and I don't know how. I don't know. I just don't have any time to do very much else anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but that's one of the things that that I wanted to talk about, because this whole these past couple months, man, I it's just nonstop, right? It's just like one after the other after the other.
Yeah, I think that they're kind of bagging us reviewers, just dishing everything out within like a 1 or 2 month time frame. I mean, that's great for consumers, right? Because you don't have to really wait between launches. Like if Nvidia releases something in July, and you know that AMD is releasing something around September, October. There's not that kind of awkward gap where you're like, well, should I just buy Nvidia or should I wait? So from a consumer side, I like that actually. It just kind of sucks for the reviewer because
Yeah.
we're having to test so much in such a short time span. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating and tiring, but I'm not going to complain that we're getting new hardware, because honestly, it had AMD's been pretty consistent with the CPU launches, but besides that, things have been pretty quiet. Like even Intel's launches haven't been huge, and we see no HEDT stuff in a while. The Nvidia didn't launch a new graphics card for years. AMD's graphics card launches were eh, and so it had been a while since we had this huge barrage of new hardware, and all of a sudden it's like everything is upon us at once.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a lot. But I don't know. I'm sure we'll get through it, man. We will power through, and we'll make it.
I feel
I
like this reminds me of like late night, like high school or college study sessions, like just cramming, trying to get all this stuff done before the deadline. Like not that we wait till the last minute, but like when you have all this work to do and you're trying to pace yourself and you keep checking the calendar and you realize that days fastly approaching, it's overwhelming. And then once you get through it, it's like, whew, I I did it, right? But then like you've got all this other crap going on with like the supply issues and the scalping issues, and then like the whole like consumer sentiment thing around all these launches is just it's awful. And that's kind of, I mean, it's not discouraging in the sense that like I don't want to make content anymore, but it's like, do I really want to spend all this time testing all this equipment that nobody can buy? You know what I mean?
I think I want to get into that, because I think there's an important argument to be made on both sides of what you just said. So yeah, we'll get into that in a second, but welcome. Thanks for being here, man. For everybody who doesn't know, this guy's name is Greg. He's got his own channel on the YouTubes. Um, Greg, why don't you talk a little bit about your channel?
I have a YouTube channel and it's called
What?
Greg. Yeah.
What? Well,
Yeah.
you keep changing the goddamn name.
You
Nobody
know
can
what?
keep.
I totally deserve that.
I went today. I think I had the same problem today that I had the last time we did this stream, where I was trying to find your logo, like your company logo, to put a.
Yeah.
It's just I found four or five different old ones. I found the one where you have the ones crossed out from the old names, like Science
Oh, yeah.
Studio, Salazar Studio, Science Studio, formerly known as, and I'm like, even that one's not gonna work.
Yeah, true,
So
true. Yeah.
in any event, if any of you guys don't know Greg, he has a channel very similar to mine, PC hardware and tech, and he does also other science content because he be an engineer. So go check him out. But thank you very much, Greg, for coming on. I know it's been quite a busy couple of weeks, and we had a big launch today, and I wanted to talk
Wait, we
about
did?
it.
What
We
what what
did.
launch?
Well, judging by the view count on my video, then no launch. So, uh,
What product are we talking about? Because
not
I haven't seen this product in the wild.
Yeah, yeah, not even really sure.
Uh,
But we got a super chat from Caleb Sivak. Says, "Hey guys, I wanted to say that I really enjoy both of your videos. Thank you very much, Caleb. Very much appreciated. And one from Remix Reviews, who is my moderator, who does not have to donate. Forgot to use either of your codes for a Windows key last night.
Oh, GG, dude, GG. Oh
We
god.
both shill for those sites, man.
Might
You gotta
as
get
well
on it.
just crumble up that key, toss it in the trash, buy another one, make sure to use
Yeah,
my office is
it's
because
only like $10. You could probably just go buy one from each of us.
probably, yeah.
You
Just
know?
build 2 different systems, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's a small tangent, but, like, it just doesn't make any sense to pay 120 bucks for a Windows 10 key when you could
Look, I didn't bring
literally
you
run it
on
for free.
here. I didn't
You
bring
could
you on
literally run it
here
for free.
to
Like,
do an ad read. No ad reads on BPS Customs. Okay.
if you're okay with a watermark, just don't activate. You literally get every feature Windows 10 has to offer, apart from changing your freaking wallpaper. Maybe one or two other like very niche things, but other than that, the operating system's free. I mean, Microsoft gets enough from your data as it is. I don't think that they're
They honestly probably could give the operating system away for free and be fine with it with the amount of people who don't uncheck those telemetry boxes,
oh
right?
god, yeah.
Like
Every time, dude. Click,
most
click.
people, right,
Yep.
most people aren't doing that. Most people are having all their data sent back and then they're farming that out to whoever. So,
Yep.
I mean, my test bench, for instance, has a watermark, and I've gotten comments like in videos like, "Oh, you don't activate your Windows." Yeah, like because I change that out like every week or every
Yep.
time I have a new round of testing or something. I'm not going to go buy a new key when everything
Yeah.
is perfectly functional otherwise.
And the volume
Um,
keys are usually tied, or the OEM keys are tied to the hardware that it's linked to, right? In the beginning, where whatever system you have
yes,
activate with, that's it. So if you swap maybe the motherboard or swap the CPU or what have you, that can trip the code, and then you'll end up needing to reactivate. And for people like us who are switching stuff all the time,
yeah,
it's just like that's not feasible. We spending might as well just buy a retail key at that point.
yeah, yeah. But enough about Windows keys. Let's talk about the issue at hand, which was this launch today.
If there's an
How did your launch go? How did you what it first of all, what did you think of the product? And then what was the reception to the way you presented your video?
um Well, I think the card was great. I mean, like, I don't want to take anything away from the card itself. I feel like the card is more or less like an innocent bystander in this because it's it's more or less, you know, it's casting this grim shadow over what we should be praising as an excellent card, especially for the money. Now, yeah, there are advantages to Nvidia counterparts. You could choose a 3080 instead, pay $50 to $100 extra depending on the card you're looking at, and enjoy RTX voice, or
That's a
the
big
broadcast
one.
studio, and I understand that those arguments are perfectly valid. And if you find
Yeah.
utility in those extra things, which I personally do, I like using shadow play a lot, for instance, then by all means, I mean, that might be worth it to you. That's not what I'm trying to argue against. But I feel like we should also remember that this is finally competition in the higher end graphics card space that we haven't had for several years. And unfortunately, that achievement is being overshadowed by the fact that nobody, I mean, like literally nobody, with the exception of a few lucky individuals who probably joined that radon
Yeah,
thing where
the red team or whatever it
yeah, the
was,
red
right?
team thing. Yeah, I forgot
Yeah.
the name of it. Yeah. I mean, those seem to be some of the only people that got one, apart from maybe like the first 2 or 3 in line at some local micro centers. And someone pointed out in the chat that this is, remember, just the reference card launch here. So AIB cards we expect are coming in the next week or so. I think it's exactly a
Well,
week from now. Um,
don't forget that AMD does things a little bit differently than Nvidia in that partners can sell reference cards. So you could get
mm,
a Sapphire 6800 XT that's going to look exactly the same as the reference card. So there might actually be, like, I don't know this at all, and from all appearances today, the stock at launch was worse than the 30 series launch. Like
yeah,
way less.
yeah,
But just keep in mind that you can potentially have another opportunity to get the same exact card in a week when
yeah.
all the partner models can then sell theirs and they might have a good stock. I don't know. So we'll find out, but I am at least willing to wait another week and see. I don't know. Maybe AMD didn't keep a huge stock for themselves. But I I spoke about this on a live stream after the 30 series launch. And I certainly understand people being frustrated with wanting a product and not being able to get one, but it's not the end of the world. Like
Yes,
there
it
are
is.
It's not though.
Yes, it is.
I don't. I think that the amount of vitriol that comes at the people that end up having the cards, like there's a lot of hate at reviewers right now, same as there was with the 30 series launch. I don't know if you saw this in any of your comments on your videos, but I'm getting it in my comments, and I got it on Twitter. Like all the reviewers have all the cards. How many reviewers have cards? 40, 50 reviewers have cards? Like, you release all those cards into the wild, and does it make any difference at all?
Yeah, I
So,
actually responded to a comment with almost like it's literally a speck of sand on a beach, and if that is what you're using as like your excuse for not being able to buy one, that doesn't really increase your odds by very much. And on top of that, if reviewers weren't sent cards, if instead an AMD just said, "Screw it, we don't want third-party independent testing prior to launch day. We're just gonna make these as readily available for our end consumers as possible," you as the consumer are only going to be able to defer to AMD's own, in-house data to assess whether or not these cards are worth it. And just from past experience, I mean, both AMD and Nvidia are guilty of this, of at times slightly misleading the public with their numbers. And this is why it's important to wait for those third party reviews. So if you don't have them, what's you're just going to take their word for it? I mean, I'm sure some would be more than happy to do that, especially in light of how little stock there is. But it's important that you have the third party reviews, at least a few. Heck, I mean, if you're going to send a few, just send three or four. It doesn't have to be a dozen or two. But
yeah,
look,
and
slippery slope.
I also think that it's important that people recognize, kind of following up on that point, the importance of having multiple viewpoints as third-party reviews, because I got a, as my voice cracks, I got a comment on my video today that says like, you didn't test the same games as Gamers Nexus, so your results are invalid. Well, I mean, I don't think so. Like, I'm pretty sure that like the more data that's available to people, and the better representation people can have to see, like, okay, these are the games that I play. Let's try to find a reviewer that check those games out. I don't
Yeah,
understand why more data is not better. And then if AMD didn't send us these cards, even though you can't buy one now, you could buy one in a month or so. And then by that time, you've had time to read the reviews and watch the reviews and figure out which card you want, or which partner model you want, or if you want them at all. So there are good sides and bad sides to this situation. Clearly, stock is a problem. Manufacturing is not pumping out these cards or any silicon right now at the rate that they need to be pumped out. And I think that that is just still residual from the shutdown. And until we get further and further away from that, we're going to see these problems still perpetuate. But we just kind of have to deal with it for now. And like, people getting all bent out of shape, I don't get it. I
yeah.
don't
So
I
a
don't know.
few things. First off, I hate it when like people use one channel's word as gospel and then like assume that because you don't do it exactly the way they did it, that like your data is inherently flawed. I always preach, and I know you do too, because I've seen you do it. I always tell my viewers to watch more than one review. Like if you're
Right.
just watching, and this could be anybody, it doesn't have to be like you said, Steve Gaber's Nexus. It doesn't have to be GN. It could be LTT. It could be Jay's Two Cents. Whoever. If you're only watching one review, if you're just watching Linus Tech Tips review, you're not doing yourself a service, because at the end of the day, you're only seeing it from their point of view. It's their point of view, and that's the point. It's why it's a review. And I'm sure that you respect their opinions based on the data that they kind of extract from whatever they're reviewing. But it's also important to get different points of view to just kind of sculpt that well-rounded picture of how this card is in the market. So that's the first thing. I hate it when someone says, "Oh, you didn't do it like they did," unless you're
Yeah.
testing wrong or incorrectly. Those comments are just senseless, in my opinion. And then, second, what do you think about? What do you think about? So, and you were mentioning supply, and
Mhm.
obviously, like Nvidia and AMD are using different suppliers, right? So TSMC for AMD, they've been using TSMC for quite a while, and Samsung shifted to Nvidia shifted to Samsung, which is
Right.
kind of a break away from the traditional. I think Nvidia at one point was using Global Foundries. I'm not sure if that was how frequent that was, but I know at one point I think they were. Um, how do you feel about Nvidia? like the statement Jensen made in an interview, he said that there's nothing wrong with supply. This is just unprecedented demand. What do you think about that statement?
There's without a doubt merit to that statement, and I think it all contributes to the situation that we find ourselves in now, with more people being at home and wanting something to do or game or now stream or even just having to build themselves a PC so that they could take Zoom calls. there is there's never been more demand for home computing, and that scales up from the bottom. So you have somebody who's going to buy some pre-built system with a 400-watt power supply and a GT 1030, all the way up to the guy who wants the game and stream in 4K and needs the highest end hardware. It's all affected. The supply chain, it affects all of that. And you have unprecedented demand coupled with probably the hottest product launch, like the 30 series back to back with the 5000 series Ryzen. Those two were probably like the hottest couplet of hardware releases that I can even remember. Like, I don't know if you have any different opinions on that, but like
Well,
demand for
let
those
me
two
ask you
was
this.
unreal.
So then, okay, so what about a company like Apple, right? Apple's widely popular. They're a multi-billion dollar company. They have a huge market
Right.
cap. Apple's everywhere. Why why doesn't Apple have the same problem with its iPhones? I mean, it's designing its own chips, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's pretty much it's making most of the stuff that goes into an iPhone. I'm not sure about the the small things, but
Right.
it's designing these things from the ground up. Why was I able to go out and buy an iPhone 12 mini for my wife the day that it launched without issues, but the same can't be said for a graphics card that goes in something else.
So I mean, obviously, I don't know. I'm speculating here. But I guess this goes back to Sling 68's super chat, right? Supply wasn't a problem for Apple. Thank you very much, by the way,
Oh,
for the
he
five
said that?
dollars.
I did not
Yeah,
even notice that someone mentioned
yeah,
Apple.
yeah. I think you stole that from
Oh,
Sling.
Sling. Yeah, I see it. I
Yeah,
did not even see
you
that.
thieved it.
Sorry,
So you're,
Sling.
yeah. So I don't know. I would speculate that Apple has leverage that no other company has. I think that they could probably demand. I think that it's likely that they have such a track record with their year over year sales that they can demonstrate that they will move X number of units basically no matter what, and they will need, they TSMC has to allocate this much fab space only for Apple because every single year they will be able to sell those units. There's never going to be a dip in their demand. They're always going to have increasing orders. Like, I think that might be why. Obviously, I don't know the inner workings there of TSMC and how much fab space Apple has versus Nvidia, but I can imagine that Apple is in that position where they can make those demands of manufacturers because, I mean, does TSMC want to lose Apple's business? You know, I
TSMC want to lose AMD's business?
I I think Apple outstrips them all. I think Apple ships more units than anybody.
Right, so then why yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say. So somebody a little higher up said there are people that just play Fall Guys and bought a 3080 and like that I guess contributing that to the reason why 3080s are in such hot demand now. But there are people who buy iPhones, like overkill iPhones to just text on them. Like that to me that argument doesn't really address the real concern here. I think that there was either some sort of mismanagement in both companies when it came to supply allocation and like timing, launch timing here, because it's not in either of these companies' best interest to piss off their fans. Like
Mm,
that's not a goal of theirs. They're not saying, "Oh, you know what? We're just going to release what few we have, and we know we're going to piss everybody off, but screw it, screw it, whatever." I feel like these companies kind of feel like their hands are forced because of each other, right? Because Nvidia
mhm.
had this target, AMD knew what that target was, or maybe vice versa, and so they kind of like, they kind of force themselves to get these products out as quickly as possible, just to say that they have, even though they don't obviously have anywhere near the supply they need to meet this demand. It's just
So you
it's
think, like, hold on, before this scrolls away, I want to say thank you to PC Philanthropy, who says great content, guys. Brian Rockville Micro Center has some in stock in the coming weeks. Well, hopefully that's the case. I know a lot of
Yeah.
micro centers were short, but hopefully, hopefully some of them are getting some product in soon.
They were
Um,
shorter, than they were with Ampere, weren't they? I mean, for
yeah,
what it
way
seemed like on
shorter.
Twitter, yeah, they had, like Micro Center had, like, maybe
Had like
2 or 3 per
some, like
store.
the most had like 10. I saw
Yeah,
like Jay retweeted something. Somebody said they had their store had 10, where like I think the Ampere launch stores had like 40 or 50 cards or something,
yeah,
which isn't a
yeah,
lot, I guess, based on like compared to the demand, but still way more. In any
yeah.
event, so what you're saying is that you think that perhaps these launches were rushed because the competing companies knew that the other one had something coming, and they're like, we can't wait to build up supply. We want to push these out as fast as possible, like especially like before the holidays or whatever. You think that played into it?
Yeah, yeah, I think all of that played into it, at least in part. Now, to what degree, I'm not sure, but, I mean, there are people they're paid millions of dollars, way more than we are, to do what they do, and they I mean, I'm sure it was a risk they were willing to take. I don't think that anybody went into this who knew about the supply side of it and said, "This is gonna be great. This is gonna go so well. No problems at all." Like, I think they knew, but I feel like they probably had no choice just because of what the competitor was doing. They wanna be the first to something. They definitely wanna get it out before the holidays because that's when the most tech sells. I'm sure our Amazon affiliate accounts can attest to that. That's a big time of the year for tech sales.
Yep.
So it's hard to ignore those deadlines, those dates,
Well,
and
what about Frank Azar's tweet? Do you
I
remember what
didn't
he
see
tweeted?
that. No, no, I didn't see that. What?
So he was commenting on something. I don't remember the exact context of it, but it was something along the lines of somebody said something about, I hope AMD's or 6000 series is not a paper launch like Nvidia, or somebody said, I bet $10 that it's a paper launch like Nvidia, and Frank tweeted, I look forward to taking your $10. And then and with the most tone deaf follow up this morning, posted that he was able to buy
I just saw
himself.
that. I just saw that. Yeah, I
And
was
I
like,
was
"Did this
like,
dude really just
you
post
got
this?"
to be kidding me, man! Like, that's something like, even if everything he's saying is true, that he's just acting as a consumer, he went on the AMD site, he was able to buy one. Good for him. As a representative of the company, he should know the position that they are in right now and the heat that they're catching for having no stock. That he should not have posted that. That was terrible. Like, I mean, I'm glad he got blasted for it, but
Yeah.
how do
I
you
saw a ton of comments, just like, "Oh, this will be good."
oh my god.
Ooh,
Like,
ooh,
good for you, bro. Enjoy your graphics card that you probably could have made a phone call and gotten sent to you. Like, why do
yeah.
you
Was it
I
to
don't
prove
know.
a point? So, like, one anecdotal sale is gonna, like, validate your previous, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
one of the smoke and mirrors type launches, where it's like, "Oh, don't worry, there's plenty of stuff." I was sitting in a conference call. I don't know if you were in this conference call. Somebody asked explicitly what the supply was going to look like for these
Yeah.
cards. This was like a
Yeah.
week or 2 before the launch.
Yeah,
And
they had us in way too many conference calls, man.
yeah,
I had
yeah. No, I was only in 2. I wasn't gonna sit through all of them. They send us the slides, and if I have any questions, I just
yeah.
follow up. But
Well,
but,
I missed one of them for the 5000 series launch, cuz it was like the press conference call, then like the engineering conference call, and like I missed one of them, and I got an email like the next day like, why weren't you in the I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm going to get the slides,
I got
like it's
stuff
not
to
a big
do, bro.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
So,
that's what I said. Like, if I have serious questions about what I'm seeing, like if something does not look right, if I have the press materials and what I'm seeing independently is not lining up with that, then yeah, I will reach out. And I did that actually with my Edelman rep. I'm sure it's probably the same one you have. And I asked him. I said, I'm in a couple of games that I've tested, I'm getting lower 1% lows, but I'm
yeah.
getting about the same averages. What's going on with this? And he asked for explicitly what the games were, settings, all that stuff. Like they take all this stuff back to the lab. It doesn't always get back in the cleanest way. And that's just because there's
Right.
so many people this has to go through. But yeah, man, and then this is what pisses me off the most. Okay. And this is more or less a reviewer point of view. So I apologize to your viewers if they're just kind of like, I can't relate to this. But when you do all this work, you stay up all night, several nights in a row to crunch these numbers, get these graphs going, make sure that everything is tested multiple times for redundancy's sake, consistency's sake, and then you publish the video only to find out that the launch is garbage, right? That there's no supply or little supply, and half of your viewers are pissed off because the video is now almost pointless, and the other half of the viewers are just, like, not even there. They're not even present because they already know that stock is extremely limited. Why are we working our butts off to meet an NDA that ultimately means nothing? Because what product are you launching? Like, what, a dozen, a handful of so cards that you just kind of had sitting on a shelf that that's going to justify your launch? Like, it's
Yeah,
so
I mean,
freaking frustrating.
that's a good point. I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with at least this information is now public and available for people when the cards do come out. But at the same time,
Don't call it a
it's
launch, just call it
yeah,
a
don't call
yeah.
right. And also, like, it's one of the reasons that I have this is the first day zero, day whatever it is, day one launch video for a product release that I've published in quite a while on the channel. I've really moved away from doing them. And one of the reasons one of the reasons was, well, first of all, my channel, and I know you experienced this to some degree, um, it just gets buried, right? Like, people
Yeah.
go to Lion, everybody knows Linus, they watch Linus's video, they watch Steve's video because he's super thorough. They watch Jay's video to see him be all salty, and he's got a, he's got a huge following too. Kyle is Goofy and Kyle. And then, like, you have smaller reviewers who are probably doing good work. I like to think that the work that you and I do is good and relevant, but at the same time, I understand why the viewership isn't there, because people get fatigued.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah, you don't wanna watch 10 reviews in,
right.
10 minutes. It's overkill, yeah.
So yeah, so I've spent the last week of my life benchmarking graphics cards, and it's ends up not being really anything that I can I don't know, be proud of there when it comes as far as a release. I think one of the reasons that I would want to delay those kinds of videos, even if I did the same video but published it a week later, maybe when supply was at least somewhat available, or and people had stopped, or people hadn't just recently watched the whole slew of the review videos, it might work out better on both ends. Like, people might watch the video as they are able to find some supply somewhere, and people might be more interested in the content. So all that I kind of took into consideration when I stopped doing launch day videos. And then, but I got these products in, and I think you were of the same mindset that I was. They're really good. Like, these
Mhm.
graphics cards are really good. And I was very excited to use them and to show them to people. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to work on a launch day video. And as it turns out, like, for multiple reasons, that was probably the wrong thing to do. So it's unfortunate. And I probably will go back to doing it, approaching it in a different way, moving forward. But I
Well,
mean,
we talked about this, and I don't know exactly how things look, how analytics look on your end in the long run, but I definitely have become less sensitive to video performance in the short run, just because there is so much competition. I mean, that's what it is. We're all more or less competing for the same viewership. That's
mhm,
not to say that because you got a view, I can't also get a view, but there is that viewer fatigue there, right? And after so many videos, you're not going to get that click. So it's it's one of those things where, like, I don't expect, like, my video is not doing very well, for a channel with 500,000 subs. I've got in 12 hours like 10,000 views. Like, that's garbage. Anybody's going to tell
right,
you that's garbage. But it is something that I look more forward to in the long term because I know those cards are going to be relevant for at least a year or two. And
right.
people are going to search these videos up when they're shopping a year from now, what have you, especially if the prices change. I've noticed, big spikes in viewership from an older view if that product is suddenly marked down, like the 3600 from AMD, for example, one of
Yeah,
those
fair enough.
CPU. So yeah, I mean, like, it depends on how you look at it, and if you have sponsors, especially who are like looking for video performance within like a week or two, like it's difficult to justify that in the long run because you don't really have the data to support that, if
Yeah.
you've only been doing them, here or there. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of the audience doesn't care about us and are complaining about our channel
Right,
metrics.
right.
But I think it's all tied together, right? Like the AMD wants publicity on these cards that are coming out that are good products. It's a symbiotic relationship, and I understand like why people are frustrated right now, but just understand that we're frustrated too, right? Like I'm not, I understand your frustration. I wish people would be a little calmer about it, but it doesn't mean that, it doesn't affect us. So I don't know. I just try to be the voice of reason if at all possible.
Yeah, sorry, Lisa walked down and they just putting the baby to sleep. Is he going to sleep? We're streaming like right now. So what's up? Oh, that was awkward. Anyway,
That's all right.
yeah, I was going through the chat because I was trying to see if there were a few people kind of bringing up similar things to what you were talking about. But just like like Obelisk here says, like a better idea would be just to ship the cards to retailers and let the customers notice their stock. Standing in line on launch day to have zero available product is infuriating, and that would piss me off too. Like I personally wouldn't wait in line more than a couple of hours if I was not certain that there were at least a fixed number of cards in that very shop. Like, I'm not going to wait 36 hours to freaking get a
I don't know
pre-order
how
slip,
people
you
do
know?
that. I
No,
don't.
I
I have no idea. Like the people that's right that were camping out in front of the
and they
Tustin store.
yeah, I mean, if they were
Like
guaranteed a card, like I saw this with the Nvidia stuff because there were more Nvidia F or not, Founders Edition cards available in Micro Center. Like they had slips that said like you are this X number person in line. We know we have this number in our store, so you're pretty much guaranteed one as long as you don't leave the line. I totally
right.
get that. If you want one that bad, do it. I mean, to get one at MSRP, that's more power to you. I applaud that. But if you're waiting in line and you have no guarantee of what's in there, like if you have no idea if they even have even a couple cards,
Yeah.
that's a little too risky for me. I personally, I like to look at my time a little being a little more valuable than that. So,
Yeah.
unless you have just like a bunch of time to kill, it's just not for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess unless, maybe students or people that are unemployed or something. I don't know who has
Yeah.
3 days to sit in front of a store. I mean, I'm sure people have their rationale. Like I'm okay, do you. I couldn't do it, and I know you couldn't do it either. So I resorted to when I bought my 3090s, I resorted to paying over retail because I knew that I needed them and that was
You're a
the only way to
reviewer.
get them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I said that in my most recent video too. It's like actually no, it was about the consoles thing. And I was like, if you are somebody who like relies on having the latest and greatest for maybe content creation, maybe you do a bunch of reviews, you want to have like immediate access to something, or maybe you want to test a few games, you're a streamer, what have you. Like if you're making money from these things, if this is like a career that you've sort of made out of utilizing consoles or PC hardware, that makes perfect sense. If you feel that the utility in a card marked up 3 times MSRP is worth it, I can't really fault you there. I mean, you kinda have no choice. And to an extent, yeah, you're still enabling scalpers and bots that
Hmm.
are scraping these up in masses, but at least at least you're weighing something a bit more than just, "I'm impatient, I need one now," for no reason other than I just wanna have it now to game with, That
Yeah.
to me is much more irresponsible, and that's why scalping is still alive and churning like nothing. I mean, it's super prevalent. There are still tons of RTX 3070s and 80s on eBay. There's 6800 XTs I just saw today on eBay. It's
Well,
freaking nuts, man.
all right, so I wanted to get into like the performance of the new AMD cards, but before we do, you brought up scalpers. Okay. Let me ask you a question. In this whole situation with lack of availability and whatnot, how mad are you at scalpers on a scale of 1 to 10? Do you put the most blame on scalpers? Do you not care what they do? Like how much do you fault the people that are reselling these cards
Versus the people that are buying them from the scalpers. Is that going to be your
versus the
next
people who are buying them from the scalpers and the stores
question?
that can't seem to get to keep bots away?
Okay. So I think the stores issue, like how retailers sell the cards, I think that's kind of a separate issue. Scalpers going to scalp what they can scalp. So that you could just look exclusively at the stores and how they're selling things, and I think that could address quite a bit. What EVJ is doing, for example, with the queue system.
That's
limiting
a
one per
great,
order, and
by
they're
the way.
waiting, yeah, and they're waiting like what a month or whatever. But you know what? That's fine. There are people that are getting cards who are happy with waiting a month or two because they're only paying MSRP, which is a
Right.
responsible way to approach it. So I applaud them for doing that. But if you are if you're buying at 3 times MSRP because you are simply impatient, I think you are just as guilty as the scalper. So if I had to split it up, I'd say 50-50. It's 50% the scalper's fault for doing. I think it's scummy, but you know what? They're doing what they can do. It's not illegal, and it's more or less arbitrage. You have a really small supply in one market, you're taking it to another market, the third party market, right?
Right.
So it's being entrepreneurial and capitalistic, but in the most scummy way possible. So that's why I'm still giving them 50% fault. But at the end of the day, they would not exist. They would not have careers scalping if nobody was buying them for those
R-
prices. So they're
right.
only
Like you
charging what they
could,
know they can get. You
you
know?
go on eBay, right? And you pull up RTX 3090 and you look at completed listings. If I'm somebody who has one of these cards and I do that and I see, damn, I could get $1,000 over what I paid for this, and then I could probably buy it again in 2 months for
Yeah.
retail.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I do that? Like that
I
seems
get it.
like
Yeah. I hate to
it
say it, but I get it. I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is not it is a little bit scummy, but at the same time the market demands this and people are taking advantage of it. So I think I'm kind of in the same position that you are. Like I put, if I was going to blame them on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably put them somewhere in the middle. I do not think that they are the most at fault here. I think that probably falls on a lot of the companies who are selling them on in mass to like to have no control over the inventory. Basically, if something goes up and it's gone right away, all to one person or to one bot or something. Um, I think that's probably way more at fault than one dude who wants to sell their 3090 for more money, you
Yeah,
know?
I agree. Yeah, I think it's small fish, big pond, right? So like a majority of the problem I think lies with the bots and the people who are scraping websites nonstop trying to buy as many as they could whenever they went in stock with no intention of ever, of ever actually using the card for any reason. I mean, I even said this in my video today. I was like, even if you're gonna buy this card for whatever reason to mine with, I could give a crap. Like I don't care. At least you're using the dang thing, like you're not just flipping it for profit and more or less using it as a medium of exchange. Like that is the thing that these retailers should be fighting. Is people who buy these in bulk, who are scraping with
Right.
the same email address or a permutation of the same email address, shipping to the exact same place. If 15 cards are in your system as being shipped to the exact same address, okay, there's a problem. That's a red flag. I mean,
Right.
that doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, and you could script that fairly easy. So I don't know, like they don't want to sell to these people. I mean, I have good faith in the retailers. I just think a lot of them are just either oblivious to it or just like the people in charge just don't know what they're doing. I don't. I'd like to think that's what it is. I think that's better than the alternative, which is that they don't give a crap and they'll sell to whoever or
Yeah,
whatever
anybody.
is willing to pay it.
We
It's
would never get them. Like consumers
yeah,
would never get them in that case.
yeah, exactly.
So,
And then what's the point of a product launch? Why would you even bother telling people that they're going to be on the shelves today? Because the only people who are going to buy them, or the only things that are going to buy them, are going to be bots. So
yeah. So let's talk about the actual cards themselves, the 6800 and the XT. Like I said, I was really impressed, and
yeah,
I know that you and I probably had similar approaches or conclusions that we came to in our videos, were that these cards are worth buying. They're really good. They compete with what they said they were going to compete with, and it's a great step for AMD. I know I saw some others who had a few complaints. Like Linus was talking about productivity, which I also commented on in my video. I don't remember if you did any of that work in yours.
no, yeah,
Um,
no, it's a separate video. Yeah, and,
I
and
mean,
I only
it's
use Premiere, so it's kind of like they
yeah,
have CUDA acceleration, so that's a little skewed anyway.
that's what I talked about. Like I did some Premiere testing. I talked about like NVIDIA Broadcast, which I'm literally using right now, is actually really important to my workflow. CUDA acceleration in not only timeline scrubbing, but like things like After Effects, and then you have hardware acceleration when exporting. All that stuff really matters for. And also, how about this? Better drivers, like more mature drivers, like stable drivers in a production environment, are extremely important. That that matters, right? But when it comes to sheer rasterized gaming performance, like the 6800 XT is a monster. That card is so,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah,
So
it's better than I thought it was gonna be. I thought
way
it was gonna
better.
be slightly worse than the 3080, and in a lot of the games I tested, it was actually, s depending on who you ask, significantly better than the 3080, and, actually kept
Yeah,
up with and even beat some of the AIB 3080s, out there. The one that we had, the Gigabyte Gaming OC 3080, couldn't keep up with it, obviously, in the cooling department. I mean, this is a reference board, reference cooler. I think AMD
right.
did a much better job this time around than they've done in the past with their blower style cards. I'm glad they're moving away from that. But yeah, I really couldn't fault the card in any real way apart from just some stupid stuff. Like I had like my red LED kept cutting in and out. I don't know why. I didn't. Maybe it was a
Yeah, mine
connection
didn't
issue
do
or
that. Here's a
uh,
question for you. So this the XT has the clear shine through, right?
yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
the 6800 just has the red. Is there RGB control? I couldn't find it.
People are convinced that there is. There's a connector for it, apparently, a header for it.
Uh-huh.
So it seems as though that is the case, but there is nothing in the at least
The
in the
software.
software we were sent.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the driver, there's nothing that suggests that it can be altered. It's a
Yeah.
bit like the Nvidia, like the Nvidia cards. Apparently, those are wired for RGB, but
Mhm.
there's literally nothing there that allows you to change it from green. And a lot of those have
Right.
like a green filter through it anyway. So yeah, it kinda sucks because, like, that was the other thing I complained about, and again, it's really cheesy. At the end of the day, if you care about looks that much, you should just, spend the extra $50 and buy a pretty beefy AIB, and there's plenty of them to choose from, on NVIDIA's side, but, the red accents, like, I can't get behind that, like, it pushes you in one direction. If you already
Mhm.
have cables that are green or blue or yellow or white, red's gonna look a bit off, so I prefer a neutral color scheme. I'd like to see that in the future, but
I
that's
think
really it, you know?
hold on.
Is the
So
6800 non-XT, is
so
that just has the red lettering? Uh,
so yeah, so this is what I'm
yeah,
talking about, right? So the XT's got the clear, but
yeah, yeah,
mine was always red, and you might be right. Like the press drivers might have not have had the RGB control in them. This is what we all use for our testing. Maybe that'll
yeah.
be in a future update. But as far as like the red goes, look at how thin that is.
Yeah, and you've got red everywhere
Tell me
else.
you could
Yeah.
tell me you couldn't stick a Sharpie in there and just like
Dude,
Sharpie
I
that away,
literally thought about
right?
Sharpie. I mean, it would look really freaking cheesy because, like, Sharpies aren't actually black when you write on, like,
I
plastic,
know.
but I did think the same thing. I was thinking, like, and I looked at it pretty close. I haven't taken it apart yet, but you look at it and it's like, I feel like this piece is like its own standalone piece, like, it's just a plastic frame. If that's the case, then that's awesome because you can either just completely remove it or you can paint it and reinsert it.
I'm
So it's
sure you
kinda
could paint it.
Kinda
I'm
hard to
sure you
tell,
can.
yeah, but, it's I just don't like that. I don't like that it forces you into one color scheme, one color
Right.
direction, and even if you could change the RGB, like, the backlighting, like, at the end of the day, who cares? Because you still have to deal with the red trim, like, you can't change
Yeah.
that without taking
Yeah.
apart the whole card and avoiding your warranty.
I
So
still think it's a good looking card. I think they did a great job with the construction of the cooler.
yeah, I
Like
agree.
when I opened the box and took it out, I was like, "Holy shit, this is heavy." Like
Yeah, yeah, it's a beefcake.
I was surprised.
Yep,
And it like as far as versus their previous even the previous 3 fan cooler for the Radeon 7, which was just garbage. This is fine. Like it does okay, you know?
yep.
Um so I think people that end up buying the reference design cards are not going to be disappointed. I was pretty happy with its performance, and I don't know if we got seeded special cards, but did yours boost to like through the roof? Like my card when I first started it up and I was like, all right, let me loop some heaven and see how this goes. I saw like 2500 megahertz and then it settled at like
Yeah.
2250 or something like that.
Did you have rage mode enabled, or was it just running into
No,
balance?
it's just
Okay.
running. Just I was like, I haven't even touched a slider yet, and this
Yeah,
thing is
so
just like flying.
I think the boost spikes are there. I think those are obviously very temporary in the beginning, just because of the thermal headroom available. I think the card knows that. I also think that there's probably something in software that they're going to tweak to address that, because I would imagine that the power spikes. I haven't looked very closely at power draw. Like I haven't like hooked up anything to look at power draw
Yeah.
explicitly, but I mean, it's not easy for any card to hit 2500 megahertz. Like that's high up there. What
Hmm.
with the 2080 Ti from a couple generations ago was only pegging around what 1900 megahertz to 2000 if you were lucky, maybe a little over that. But and that
When I was
sets
doing like the
so
dry ice cooling on my 3090 and I was running the card at minus 75C, I was getting 2400
yeah,
megahertz,
that's
you
like,
know?
yeah, sub-zero cooling,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
Jesus.
these car like
Yeah.
I know that like clock speed's not everything, but to see that from an AMD card, whereas in the past, like everything going back many generations where AMD's like, oh, this card's gonna run at 1900, and then you get it on your bench and it's like 1450. You know, like
Yeah, yeah.
like I had no expectation that this card was actually going to perform the way it did.
Was
You
yours
know,
quiet too? Did you notice how quiet yours was under load? Like,
it
I
was pretty
was
quiet.
yeah,
It was like the sound was, I think, the same like as with the Nvidia Founders cards. The
yeah,
sound is
I
more,
measured slightly lower, slightly quieter, yeah,
yeah,
but
something along those lines, and also like a more pleasing tone. I don't know how to describe it. It was
yeah,
like
it
not
wasn't
like a,
whiny, it was like a
yeah,
bassier tone, which and
yeah, it was like
we're
a,
less receptive to bassy tones, so yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
like a like a soft whoosh instead of like a high pitched whine.
yeah.
So yeah, I was not, I had no problems at all with the cooler. I thought it was fine. Like at the worst, it was fine, and at best, it was like that's pretty good.
Yeah, for the
So
price, I mean, if AIBs are gonna mark these up 50 to $100, which, I mean, if they're gonna do that, they better have pretty beefy boards that can overclock a bit higher and run a lot
yeah,
quieter. Then I still think that the reference board is worth considering at $650 when seen in the context of what NVIDIA's offering. Someone in the chat mentioned that they prefer the red. They like the red. It reminds them of Radeon. It makes sense. And then you can resort to AIBs for the
right,
the more neutral color schemes. But I disagree if the intent of the founder's card or the reference card is to at least somewhat compete with the AIBs. Because if that's what you're trying to do at the end of the day, then I think that you should probably try to appeal to a wider array of builds. And the easiest way to do that, the cheapest way to do that, is to just make it color neutral. You can have the Radon logo glow in red in the beginning. You're still paying homage to the Radon brand, but
right.
make it, RGB, functional, and keep the actual card, the physical card, neutral. I don't think that's too much to ask for.
Yeah, they came so close. Like the card is black and silver,
Yeah, it looks
like
great elsewhere. Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah,
Yep.
and then like if you have it like in a vertical, right? Like
I was
vertically, if
thinking
you
that too. Yeah,
like
there's no color there.
this looks
Yep.
sick, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, that red, I don't, I think they could have done worse. Let me say that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, I agree.
they, um, so I'm definitely happy with that. I'm happy with the performance. My card, there were a couple titles where my card beat my 3090, like the AMD sponsored titles like Valhalla and
Yeah,
Dirt
Dirt 5.
5,
Yeah, Dirt 5 had destroyed the 3080.
destroyed.
Mine was
Yeah,
freaking annihilated.
annihilated.
It was the lowest 1% of frames I was mapping on the 6000 XT were higher than the average frame rates I was clocking in on
Yeah,
the 3080s. It was pretty laughable.
that was nuts.
Uh,
But by the way, the menu system in Dirt 5, trash.
Yeah,
Like,
I could not find the freaking built-in benchmark. I was like, "Where is it?" It's
yep,
under profile. Why would you put it under profile? What does that have to do with a built-in benchmark or in-game settings? What the
those
crap?
menus were garbage. And
Yeah.
I benchmarked Godfall. Did you benchmark Godfall?
Nah, was that one of the 5 games that they were
Yeah,
launching
yeah,
it with?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I need
So
to
it's
get a
one of
key
them.
from them. Yeah, for that
Yeah,
one.
they'll send you a key. And for anybody watching, AMD did send me the key for Godfall. So I have now disclosed that.
Disclosure.
Yeah. But so you can't run the benchmark on Godfall until you play a full, like a mission.
Oh, that sounds
So
like GTA 5 almost.
yeah, so I was like, I'm in the middle of benchmarking, and like I don't know how you do it, but I do 3 runs at every resolution. So 3 runs at 1080, 3 runs at 1440. So like I'm rolling here. I've got my whole benchmark suite. I did like, I don't remember exactly, 10 games plus productivity. It was a lot of runs. And Godfall was the last game that I had to benchmark in when I was going through. And I get to Godfall. I'm like, all right, this is the last one. Let's just run it. We'll move on to the next card. And I get to it, and it's like, you can't, like, you can't run the benchmark. It's not an option. You have to play the game. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to play a game right now. It's like
Yeah.
midnight. I've been doing this all day. Like, I just want to run the stupid benchmark, and you have to play the game. So I was playing the game, and it was horribly, horribly stuttery at first.
Oh
And
god.
I was like, this is terrible. Like I'm going to play this game. I'm going to waste all this time. And then I'm going to run these benchmarks, and they're going to be like, the 1% lows are going to be like 6, you know? So I'm like, what do I do about this?
Sounds
I
like
actually,
PUBG.
well, I talked to Keith from WCCF, and he's like, it's an Ubisoft game. He's like, just reboot it. And I'm
Is that all
like,
it took?
I'm like, all right. So I did, and yeah, that worked. So
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. Gee.
um,
Well, I guess that's
yeah,
good. Better than it just being flawed from the get
better
go.
than
I
it
mean,
just being terrible. Yeah.
yeah. Golly. Yeah, if I
Um,
ever see a game like and I've benchmarked like PUBG before a few times, and I do it just to show like a worst case scenario for a game that's just horribly unoptimized across the board. Tends to be an NVIDIA biased title, which is why I usually balance it with something like Ashes of the Singularity or whatever. But
yeah. I don't even
there,
use that anymore.
no, I didn't in this last round just because nobody freaking plays it. Like, who cares? It's like another synthetic. But it's it's if I see a game that's like that stuttering, it's like no matter what I do, I can't get rid of it. Like I just toss it out. Like it's just not worth it because like I don't expect any of my viewers to play a game that's like that trash unless it's good on Nvidia and for some reason awful on AMD. It's worth mentioning. But if it's
Right.
horrible across the board, it's like why am I even wasting my time?
Yeah. Have you benchmarked Far Cry New Dawn?
No, I have not yet.
Because I'm running into issues with that game where it doesn't, the results are so all over the place, and it's more a CPU bound title than anything else. So I think I'm going to remove that from my suite. And I talked about that in my video actually, because it does, like, I put the results up and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like
Is
this,
that Far Cry 6? Is it the sixth one?
no, it's five, it's Far Cry 5, but it's like an expansion. It's like a second Far Cry 5.
Gotcha.
Um, so I don't know. I think I'm gonna take away that, but I tried to mix and match my titles. Like I had a bunch of DX11, bunch of DX12. I had a Vulcan title in there. I did some 1% and 0.1% lows, and there were a couple of games like Ghost Recon Wildlands. AMD wasn't particularly impressive in, but even
Yeah.
games like Crisis Remastered with ray tracing on high, like no game is crushing. No GPU is crushing that, but AMD GPUs did way better than I thought. Like
Yeah.
they were able to, like, ray tracing is the weak spot of these cards, even though they still can do it. And I was expecting to see, like, I don't know, low double digit scores for
Yeah.
Crisis, and it didn't happen. Like they performed okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I was
I think it's a
pleased.
testament to like the raw horsepower of the core itself, like or the unit itself. So as far as I'm aware, like Nvidia having more or less proprietary cores in its GPU for ray tracing, like its ray tracing cores or the Turing cores, which helps for
Mhm.
or tensor cores, excuse me, which help with DLSS. Like they've kind of sculpted in the second revision, they've sculpted a lot more of that GPU around those two features because they know that's going to be their competitive advantage going forward. Whereas, from what I understood in the press release from for AMD when I was at I think it was with the engineering press conference or whatever. The way they were describing it was like it was kind of a hybrid between like a software based ray tracing
Yeah, they have
and like
accelerators, so that's not
yeah,
like
and like somewhat hard
it's
like
not dedicated cores, but it is hardware. But
yeah,
it's not like the RT cores. So,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's interesting.
but
It's one of those things that's like you'd have to really deep dive, and a lot of that's above me. But
then you have people like, so Philip Vladson in the chat says zero interest in ray tracing. I wonder how many people out there are in that boat, because if that's the case, if the majority of people don't care, then does it matter that one card is better at it than the other? I think the bigger issue is that NVIDIA's ray tracing features include not only pretty reflections, but include more detailed shadows, and they include things like DLSS. So, like, you have, those are pure functional changes and differences. Like, you could run a game and it would look as good and it'll run faster because you could use DLSS, and that's
yeah,
all
yeah,
processed in the extra hardware that NVIDIA packages with their GPUs.
and that's
Whereas,
the selling point of DLSS. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You can keep going. I just
no,
I
you're good. Go ahead.
so like yeah, the whole thing about DLSS, and there are people like even in my own Discord, like there are a few people, Matthew, if he's watching, he knows who he is. Like he's like against DLSS. He doesn't
You know who
he
you
thinks
are.
thinks it's a gimmick, right? I think yeah, he just he's not into it, doesn't buy it, thinks it's a way to just kind of like make your stuff look better than it actually is. Well, if you actually sit down and compare a DLSS title with it enabled versus disabled, right? Native 4K versus DLSS upscale to 4K. It is very difficult to distinguish between them, especially with DLSS 2.0. I mean, it's pretty
Right.
much night and day. And that I think is where they're going to start, they'll start shifting to where they're going to prioritize shadows, or they're going to prioritize uh whatever post FX. Like there are going to be things that they add to this over time that the neural network will get better at predicting, and that will again offset a lot of that leverage originally on the GPU. It'll free up that space for extra things that you can enable in game, right? At little to no performance hit. That's where the true value of DLSS lies,
Hmm.
and that's why so many people are asking. I mean, I read the AMD subreddit today when they were doing the AMA, which was ridiculous, by the way. I mean, they were answering some good questions, but like a majority of the people were asking about stock, and they just had no answer.
I didn't see it.
Which
I actually
but
honestly, like,
oh yeah,
as much
people were pissed.
as much as the AMD subreddit, as powerful as they are, because there are so many members, I try to stay away from there. I find that place pretty toxic. So
I've been through the ringer with them. I mean, like they're good people. At the end of the day, I think that some of them are very they're very
zealous.
narrow-sighted. Yeah, yeah, zealous. Yeah, that's probably a better word than what I used. But it's yeah, kind of a hodgepodge. Like I think there's plenty of good people there that kind of get a bad rep just because of the few who are very extreme. But
It's an interesting
yeah,
community, and I think that they have a lot of sway right now. Um, and I'm glad that AMD is engaging with them, because it's a good way to put out information. But I just wish that a lot of their interactions with with media, with me, with probably with you, like, were just a little more civil. It's a lot of attacking that happens as a result of that, like, hive mind,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that's
It's
unfortunate, because I know they probably are well meaning, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of it gets misconstrued in text as well. Like if these were face to face, like verbal arguments, I feel like things would be presented and argued much differently. Like arguing is people think like arguing always has a negative connotation, and a lot of the ways that we use the word it does. But you can argue both sides of something. Two people could sit down and have a respectable argument and
Right.
still come out of it civil. And so that's the important thing to keep in the back of your mind when you're on a place like Reddit, which is usually a cesspool. But
My cat is climbing through, or was climbing through my shelf with all my processors on it, just knocking boxes off.
yeah.
And there's like
I
a whole bunch
saw.
of,
I'm gonna pull up a chat real quick. I saw a question. It wasn't really a question. It was more of a statement, but I think it's a good point we might get to touch on real quick.
yeah,
Uh, it was somebody said something about ray tracing and how ray tracing is kind of I've never used it. It's not something I'll probably ever use just because of the performance it yada yada. So it's not one of the factors that goes into my purchasing decisions. And someone else responded. This was Dan. Dan, you know who you are. Not to call you out, Dan, but I guess I kind of am. Dan says, BS, you are interested in ray tracing. You just can't afford a card. And maybe I'm not the most qualified person to say this because I'm sent a vast majority of my cards. I don't pay out of pocket for them, although I'm expected to do a lot of work in exchange for them. Um, I can tell
what
you
kind of
that
work?
yeah, the good stuff. I can tell you that despite having very easy access to ray tracing capabilities, I almost never enable it for the simple reason that it still is taxing on the card. I would much rather play at a higher frame rate, especially in say Modern Warfare. I used to play Modern Warfare all the time. Now the new things like Cold War, but I never enabled DXR in that game. It
Hmm.
just the subtle differences. I mean, the reflections, yeah, they look cool. Like if you're actually paying attention, but who the heck is, right? You're focusing on what's in front of you, what's shooting back at you. That's the real objective of the game.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in taking a 20-30% performance cut for better looking reflection. So until that margin drops to say 10%, maybe less than 10%, it's not something I'll entertain, even though I have access to it. So I think that point of view is a little. I mean, that comes across a little elitist there.
So I don't know that we're ever going to see like the performance hit from enabling a feature like ray tracing drop to zero. We might see in the far future games that are only written with ray tracing, and no rasterization.
Yeah,
And,
sure.
and but until that happens, enabling an additional bit of eye candy is always going to cost you something. There's always going to be a cost to your performance. And I think that the best we could hope for is optimization, which allows a narrower hit,
Yeah,
right? Like you said, like getting down to 10% might be acceptable, but even that might not be for some people who are doing competitive games, right? Like, why would you want to take that hit?
yeah,
Like Fortnite supports ray tracing now.
yeah.
How many people do you think play Fortnite with ray tracing
Well,
on?
can you imagine like CS:GO or something like that? So like people who play CS:GO like and take it seriously and play professionally, like some of them play at like 720p. It's like they don't
Right.
give a crap about how the game looks because that again, that's not the objective of the game. Not to say that there aren't games like that out there. If there was a game like City Skylines, let's say, where I'm just kind of like casually building stuff and I just like looking at pretty things, that might be a game where I'm okay with a 20 to 30% performance hit. But in a competitive fast shooter, which is what a lot of these games are, or maybe like just third person like adventure games or what have you, I'm much more concerned with fluidity, and you're compromising some degree of fluidity for those better looking shadows and reflections.
Yeah. I think it probably will play better just on sightseeing games, games that have
Yeah.
slower pace
Yep.
than first person shooters. That's
Yeah,
just the way it's
it's
going to be
weird that,
for
like,
for a long time.
it's weird that's the target, like, don't you think that's a little strange that, like, the games that you probably would imagine a lot of people don't care about having ray tracing effects built into, are the games that are actually being developed to include DXR? Like, does that
Like
I
Call of
just
Duty.
yeah, like Call of Duty, like
Yeah.
Fortnite,
Yeah.
I could see, like World of Warcraft, like I'm sure that like especially with what they're doing with AMD now, I can see how that could be a title eventually where they improve the ray tracing capabilities there. I could see that maybe being a more applicable scenario for it. But yeah, it's just weird that they're targeting first person shooters and third person shooters with for ray tracing. I don't
I
know.
think I
Battlefield
mean
5.
obviously it's up to the developers, right? So I think that I think it is a little odd that the developers that are choosing to pursue adding ray tracing to their games are the developers of first person shooters. At the same time, I'm glad that it's somebody because it's a
True. Yeah.
technology that should be explored and is kind of the next step. So somebody's got to do it.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
so I'm glad that somebody is, but I would
Yep.
love to see it on a slower game, something that where you could explore an environment. Like honestly, I think so. To see ray tracing
That would be
on
sick. That's
Witcher.
why when you were talking I thought that I'd heard you say that. Yeah, that would have been pretty
Yeah.
cool. No lie. Yeah.
Hold on. I think we froze. What happened to my stream? Have not dropped any
Yeah, I'm hearing that
frames.
too. Yeah, now it came back. It came back for me.
It came back.
I've noticed it's kinda
Sorry,
dropping in
guys.
and out.
Sorry, guys. Um, so in any event, I got one super chat to read. Where did it go? There it is from Shane Eastlick. Brian/Greg. Notice that I'm first. Thanks, Shane. Do you think ray tracing will improve more with AMD than NVIDIA in future with consoles being Zen and RDNA? And then I'll center you in the frame in a second.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
Are you still in the chat?
Yeah, I'm just chatting with him.
Did you
I see you
did
now live.
am I live again?
Yeah.
Is it are you off centered?
I'm just, like, zoomed way out.
Yeah, okay.
It's like
All right.
yeah, it's like a weird
All right,
box.
I'm going to fix this. I'm fixing it. I'm so sorry, guys. Uh
It's still kind of lagging. I think it's cutting in and out.
Is it? All right, well, let's
Yeah.
wrap. Let's wrap then.
Kinda
Um
weird. Like, it's almost like it's almost like a network issue, but I know if your PC just crashed, it might be like a
it might
oh
just
god, it
be
looks
like
like a
running all kinds of startup tasks. I don't know.
yeah. Huh.
You look all
Like
weird in
watching it
the you
restart
look
just
all weird in the Discord now
oh,
cuz
what the crap? What is this? This is jank. My god.
Hey guys, I hope that you can. I hope you could hear me. And I hope you could hear and see Greg. I am so sorry about that. My PC just crashed, so I just had to start up OBS again really quick, and I started up the Discord call, and now Greg is gonna look like he's half size.
Someone
So
said Brian must have Comcast. Is that true?
I do have Comcast. How did you know? But I
This
have like
explains
I
everything.
I have I have Comcast's like business gigabit.
Oh my god,
So
you have business. Why? Why do you have business? You're just paying more for like timely service, but like they're always down, so who cares?
gigabit's pretty nice. Like I couldn't get gigabit otherwise. The problem is gigabit upload is still only 30. Like
Oh, it's not
it's
sequential?
a thousand down, it's 1,000 down and 30 up.
Oh, you know what it
So
is? You're probably fiber to the node, and then I think you're probably copper to the house, which is crap because like there's no like you're still limited by copper somewhere, obviously, if you're only getting 30 up.
yeah, I don't
That's
know.
like typical copper uploads.
So we're gonna leave you looking sad in this little box.
Oh, this looks
Uh,
awful. No.
I'm not gonna fix it because guys, unfortunately, we do have to wrap. Greg has some dinner to go eat.
Mhm.
So what's for dinner, man?
Lisa's cooking chicken. Chicken.
Chicken.
Yeah, chicken.
I had some Chipotle tonight. It was delicious.
Oh my god, you're one of those people. Jesus.
What
Go.
does that mean? What
Just
is one of
go.
those people?
Just get
I
out of
cook
here.
all the time.
Oh,
Come on. I'm entitled
that
to
is
some Chipotle.
that is
So Matthew Lang, one last super chat says, "Get you some nuggets or a salad bar." Streamer's choice. Seriously though, I enjoy both of your channels' content and appreciate what you guys do and contribute to the community. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much, Matthew Lang. But
thanks, man.
we are gonna wrap this up. Sorry for the interruption, guys. That was really weird, but I'm glad we got through a really good stream. And thank you very much for everybody contributing here. I know we couldn't get to a lot of comments, but there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk about with Greg. And thanks, man. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks. I'm staring at myself in this weird box that you have me in, and I'm like, I'm
It
actually,
is
you
a
know
weird.
what?
You
It's
should stay in
janky,
that.
but it works. It works. I think people
Stay
want to see less of me.
you stay in that weird box. You do not have my permission to come out of that weird box.
Okay. Yes, daddy. Yes,
All
daddy.
right, man.
All right.
I'll talk to you later. Thanks
Yeah.
everybody, and maybe we'll do this again next week. Who knows? Take care and good luck buying a GPU.
Oh, good luck. You'll need it.
Yeah.